Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, we'll be getting started in just a moment here. We just want to give people a little bit of time to join the webinar. So take a minute, grab your coffee, your tea, your water, and get settled, and we'll be right back. Thanks. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for our Transform IVR Experiences with Digitalization and AI webinar. My name is Ariel Feist. I'm a member of the eGain team, and I will be your webinar host for today. We've got a lot of material to cover in a short amount of time. I know everybody's eager to get started, but before we do, I'd like to go over a few details about the webinar, as well as introduce our speakers today. First up, we have Sheila McGee-Smith. She's the founder and principal analyst at McGee-Smith Analytics and is leading communications industry analyst and strategic consultant focused on the contact center and enterprise communication markets. Her insight helps enterprises and solution providers develop strategies to meeting the escalating demands of today's consumer business customers. Sheila also serves as the contact center track chair for Enterprise Connect. Following her, James Hunt. James is Vice President, Product Management at eGain with over 20 years experience in delivering customer contact technology. At eGain, James heads up the analytics management product lines, delivering capabilities that enable leading businesses in contact center platforms to measure, manage, and optimize their day-to-day operations. In addition to our presenters, we will also have a demonstration by Vivian Wen, followed by some Q&A. So please feel free to type in your questions to the GoToWebinar panel throughout the presentation. We do have a limited amount of time, so there's no guarantee we'll be able to cover all the questions that come in, but that shouldn't discourage you from typing everything away. All right, I've rambled long enough. Sheila, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ariel, and welcome everyone. Glad to see so many of you have joined. Wow, we have quite a crowd. So James and I are here to entertain you for the next hour or so. So our title today is Transforming IVR Experiences with Digitalization and AI. You know, we hear a lot right now about digitalization. We hear a lot about artificial intelligence, but the IVR is usually not part of that conversation. Why? The heyday of the IVR was back in the 90s. I remember it well. A customer would call an 800 number. Instead of putting the customer on hold to just wait, a recording would ask the customer to enter some identifying number, an account number, or something else. After a few more prompts, the required information could be pulled up from a database. I mean, I remember the first time I went to a banking telephone number, and all I wanted to do was find out if a check had cleared. And I was able to do that in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes without ever having to speak to an agent. So the IVR was providing information without having to wait for a customer service representative. So that was great. And initially in the 90s, we got to the point where we were automating, the contact centers, about 5% of interactions. And that was good. The thing is now, technology is available to do so much more. What do you think, James?
I agree, Sheila. Well, welcome everybody. So yeah, I think, obviously IVRs are an extremely mature technology, and they can be good at what they do. Primarily that's segmenting callers, routing them to the right place to handle their inquiry within the contact center, and performing rudimentary transactional types of self-service. But it's very true that in the last 2 decades, not a great deal of innovation has happened in that space. Certainly that's what we see with the people and the enterprises that we deal with. And I think that's because while they do those kind of limited set of things well, very often the IVR is really a focus for innovation in terms of the customer experience. And when they are, I think it's usually that focus is about, revamping the speech interface rather than thinking beyond that. And I think the world has moved on somewhat. Now, sometimes the IVR can remain in that kind of stasis because they're kind of internal barriers to change. So there's risk associated with changing it. It's stable. You don't want to break it. You don't want to change the customer experience. Maybe people are used to it. And obviously, it's costly to do so. The rip and replace. You spent money on it. You sunk investment in it. You want to leverage that. So I agree. That the opportunity is there now to do a lot more.
So one of the things that we're finding is, whereas I was so happy, right, in '94 to be able to use an IVR to get a bank balance, now people pretty much hate the experiences that they have with IVRs. They're pretty miserable from end to end. The customer experience, typically people are, starting with the IVR, but very quickly escalating to agents, and it ends up being an agent-assisted resolution. For the businesses, they're having trouble measuring what's going on and managing it so that they can figure out how to optimize it. And one of the reasons that things are so miserable is that a lot of the things that the IVR used to do, many customers can now do with smartphones. So I think the challenge is to make the IVR a more modern tool, one that can work with the smartphone. I think James can tell us how he's doing that with some eGain technology.
Yeah, certainly we will cover that in depth today. I think yes. So the proliferation and the adoption of digital channels through devices like smartphones offers us great opportunities to bring new capabilities to in quotes legacy channels like the IVR, like voice. But still, we see within enterprises, even with basic things like getting insight into what that customer experience is within the IVR is still a challenge. And this, again, there can be multiple reasons for this. So it can be a lack of joined up data between the IVR platform and the other systems within the contact center. There can be a mix of different vendors, siloed information. So by understanding that end-to-end customer experience, we can then start to bring in digital capabilities in a measured way and focused way so that we can start to optimize that customer experience and enhance it.
So we've been talking about how, IVR experiences are miserable, but to sort of back that up, right? We know that things have been changing very quickly with respect to customer experience, and companies have been understanding that they have to step up their game. So in the February and early March timeframe, eGain did a survey, SurveyMonkey consumer survey, and asked for people who had made a call into customer service with a smartphone. That was one of the screening criteria for the survey. And if they had had one or more interactions with an IVR from their smartphone. And data was collected from 500 respondents in the United States, and then in other geographic areas as well, an additional set of respondents. And so they asked for people who had contacted a business or a government organization for customer service in the last 12 months. So this is very recent data. You know how often you come to a webinar and it's like, data from 2018. I'm like, okay, that's not relevant. So this is crazy relevant, right? Just happened, data collection. And what do we find? 88% of respondents said the IVR was not intelligent enough. 38% saying it was either unintelligent or somewhat unintelligent, and only 50% saying it was somewhat intelligent. Nobody giving great intelligence marks to the IVR. And then on the other hand, 60% tried to zero out to a call center agent very often or often. And 26% said somewhat often. So clearly, if you look at this data, people don't think the IVR is smart enough. It should do better. They're constantly trying to get to an agent. So what are your thoughts here, James?
Yeah, I think that reflects, what we're seeing, certainly, and it reflects my own experience, right? So the frustrating elements of the IVR experience persist. And if we think about a typical IVR self-service experience, it is challenging from the IVR's experience to kind of pace the way it delivers and collects information, to match every caller's expectations. So, how many times have you listened to a menu and thought, oh, that second option sounds like it might be the right one, but I'll listen to the rest of the options to see if there's something that's more appropriate. So you listen through the menu, and then by the time you get to the end, you've forgotten what the first one was. So you need to go through again, and it's a frustrating experience. Now, obviously, you can bring ASR, speech recognition, and natural language type dialogues, but that presents its own challenges. Even then, it can be difficult for the caller to know what they can do if you kind of give them an open question-based speech interface. So I think, with self-service, limitations of IVR platforms can lead to challenging experiences. And again, like I said, people don't have visibility of those experiences.
So one of the things that we talked about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago in the contact center market was about customer effort, and that there was a great correlation between how difficult the service channel was for a customer and how likely they were to promote that customer in the future, have customer loyalty, and everything that James and I just talked about in terms of the existing experience with IVRs, trying to get to an agent 86% of the time, trying to zero out, all speaks to too much customer effort to get what the consumer wants to get done, right? And so as we move forward, what we're finding is, improving self-service, the goal is not to decrease calls to agents, right? Very often when contact centers talk about increasing self-service, there's this feeling that, well, they're just trying to use fewer agents. No, what they're really trying to do is reduce the amount of effort it takes for consumer to complete their transaction. I mean, that's what the consumer is looking to do, is just to complete their transaction. So how do we reduce effort using that IVR and helping the customer who does want to use self-service? I mean, obviously, the other part of this, which is so interesting, is the generational differences, right? Back in the 90s, we didn't have the mobile devices that we have today. We didn't have the web, right? So an IVR first service there was a great alternative. But now we have other self-service alternatives. And what consumers are looking for is for we, the contact center industry, to tie the IVR to these newer choices that we have that we didn't have in the past to overall reduce customer effort. So another question that was asked was about how difficult it was to get an answer, right? 67% of the respondents said they wrestled with the IVR to get an answer for more than 5 minutes. 41% said 15 minutes or more. I mean, extraordinary. 70% waited for 5 minutes or longer and then tried to zero out. And then those who waited over 14 minutes, over 15 minutes, 43% of the time, they're zeroing out. And so what we have is these really high numbers reported that IVR self-service does not reduce effort. I mean, if the goal of the IVR initially was an easy answer for a consumer, we have certainly gotten very far away from those original intents. Customers are escalating calls and zeroing out and facing really long wait times, because I think sometimes we're using the IVR for functions that it wasn't necessarily intended for, which is holding customers in line as opposed to getting them information quickly. James?
Yeah, I agree with that point, Sheila. I think a couple of things there. So, that difficulty in getting an answer and navigating, there could be multiple things that contribute to that, whether that's, a limitation of the specific platform itself, poor dialogue design, just, kind of the nature of the beast, as I said on, the previous slide. There are challenges with, kind of making an IVR a good fit for some use cases. And, whilst there have been advances, they're not proliferating because, of those barriers to change that I talked about. And in terms of, kind of holding people in line, once you get into that queue, yeah, you're at the mercy of all the usual factors that come into play there, like long average handle time, spikes in calls. So, it's always a challenge for contact centers to predict and manage customer wait time efficiently. So yeah, once you're in the queue, you're in the queue.
And it's not just about time. I mean, the other level of frustration is the lack of transfer of context. You and I being in this market, one of the first things I ask an agent after I have input information into an IVR is, do you have my account up? And probably 90% of the time they don't. They, as you know, re-ask for information that was already given to the IVR. And there can't be anything more frustrating than that. When IVRs began, that's where people were starting their journey. Today, customer journeys don't start or end in the contact center. They're starting on mobile apps, they're starting on the web, they're connecting through Facebook, they're on Twitter doing things. But at the end of the day, the contact center is that ultimate place where if I can't find the information, if I can't get what I need, I'm going to call into the contact center. So the IVR is still key if that's the only way that somebody can get to that live agent who can deliver information. So lack of transfer of context is a real pain point. And I think I've been using this slide for a couple of years when I speak in groups or on webinars to say, one of the things we have to do is change our mindset in the contact center. We're not handling interactions. We're jumping into the middle of a journey that a customer is on. And the most context we can have about that journey and deliver that in a reasonable way to agents is going to make that journey more successful for the customer. So to the point that I made, 73% of the respondents to our survey this month had to repeat what they entered to the IVR to the human agent. And then in terms of lack of consistency, 44% say they got different answers from the phone agent versus some digital touch points that they had or some information they might have gotten to the IVR from the IVR. And at the end of the day, this just leads to very poor customer experience and poor agent experience, because frustrated customers take it out on agents often. I mean, again, those of us in the market tend to be kinder because we know how difficult that agent job can be. But from a business perspective, it leads to a lot of repeat calls, which is not good for the business and clearly not good for the agent who gets that second call from somebody who's already been made unhappy on the first call. I mean, just recently, in the last 24 hours, I've had a situation where I was saying to an agent, this is the third time I've called into your company because I was hung up on twice because agents didn't have the context and were pretty upset. So the IVR problem, for those who have put in those IVRs and don't sort of do the care and feeding and think of it as a point of innovation, is that it delivers poor customer experience. There are long hold times. There are, conversational cul-de-sacs, things just spinning around going, you're doing the same thing over and over again. You're repeating information to agents once you've escalated from the IVR to an agent, and it's a poor business experience. There's very often no visibility into what the customer experience was in the IVR, so the agent has no context there. The IVR silos is a silo because there's no connectivity to digital channels, right? You enter an IVR, that IVR has no idea that you may have already been on the website, or that what you'd really like to do is to be able to use your mobile phone to see a visual version of the IVR choices. You know, James talked about you get through the sixth choice and you can't even remember, is it 2 or 1? I often find myself, as they're going through choices, putting up fingers on my digits on my hand to say, okay, 1, it could be 1, but I got to keep listening. Oh, it could be 3. Let's keep the third digit up. Might be 5. So it's 1, 3, or 5, which is not exactly a great customer experience. And often, whenever you do want to make a change on the IVR, you're forced with a dependence on IT to sort of work this into the many other things that they have to do. So how do we modernize the IVR experience without discarding the large investment that companies have made in the IVR? James?
Thanks, Sheila. Yeah, so, I mean, you made a good point just then. So, I mean, IVRs are rarely connected to the digital channels that, you know, consumers increasingly prefer and, you know, would like to engage on. So this is a question, you know, how can we leverage that existing investment, that existing IVR infrastructure and capability, and make it more successful and more useful for customers? And our approach to that, our solution to that, is to offer the option to switch from a voice-based IVR engagement to a more digital, AI-driven experience through messaging channels. And we call this capability Smart IVR. Here's an example of what that Smart IVR experience can look like. So if you think about a caller, they call into the business, they get put into the IVR. So the IVR can leverage eGain's Smart IVR capability to check that the phone they're calling on is message enabled. And if it is, then offer an alternative channel for engagement. Now, these days, the people that call in are mostly using, you know, mobile phones. Right? So the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and that's an acronym we're all a lot more familiar with these days, unfortunately. They do an annual survey and they measure the percentage of people and homes that are completely wireless. Right? So in their most recent survey, which is the 2020 survey, 61% of people in the US personally had a wireless telephone and lived in a household that did not have a landline at all. And in certain age bands, so I think in the kind of in the 30 to kind of 40 age band, that gets up into the 80% range. So, and that's not just people who have a smartphone, it's people who only have a smartphone. Right? So kind of the number of people who are eligible for this type of experience is broad. So if we've identified that they're on a message-enabled phone, the IVR can then hand off the conference or offer the customer the option. The customer can choose to take a message-based channel instead of going through the IVR. And at that point, our Smart IVR capability will pick up the conversation with the customer via messaging, and the IVR essentially drops out of the call. At that point, the customer can then engage either with a virtual assistant-driven message interaction or a live agent. So that could be, their inquiry could be resolved through a conversation type interface across messaging that either, you know, solves their inquiry quickly and easily, or if need be, can seamlessly, you know, without any interruption, escalate to a live agent and back again if necessary. And so, you know, that kind of end-to-end there is the Smart IVR experience and the kind of capability that we can bring. So the Smart IVR does those three things, right? It connects your existing IVR to digital channels, meaning you can leverage that existing investment. It brings eGain's powerful AI-driven guidance and knowledge into that customer conversation, meaning that you can use the same body of knowledge to drive inquiry resolutions through all your channels. So conversations that start in the IVR can then leverage the same knowledge through a messaging channel that your agents are leveraging when they talk to customers across the phone or whatever channel they might be engaging. So you're getting consistency there. And because we have that kind of single consolidated source of information at the heart of all this, it's easier for the business to stay in control, as they can take control of the content and keep it fresh, keep it updated, which is kind of typically a challenge, as I said, with IVRs is it's difficult to maintain and to keep them current and to adapt to changing use cases.
So James, are you saying that if I have an existing Avaya contact center with an Avaya IVR or Cisco with the customer voice portal, that I'd be able to use eGain Smart IVR, or do I have to have a new IVR?
No, absolutely. So this is designed to work with your IVR. So we have integrations with the leading platforms like Cisco, Avaya, Amazon Connect, and it's readily extensible to others. So essentially, all you need to do is paste in the logic that we bring as part of our IVR, Smart IVR into your application, just to do that initial lookup, and then from that point everything happens outside the IVR. So it's really a very low friction integration.
Excellent.
Okay, and this capability is all underpinned by our IVR contact center and digital analytics. So what we bring with this is the ability to measure and optimize not just the IVR, but the rest of the customer conversation, that entire web of interactions that you kind of showed on your slide earlier as well. So looking at those three aspects, connect, solve, and optimize. If we look at connect first, it's our messaging hub capability that allows us to enable those digital conversations through the most common digital channels. Our messaging hub has three core components, essentially the connectors, which allow us to connect to the various messaging platforms like SMS, WhatsApp, Apple Business Chat, to allow the back and forth of messages. But there are also APIs for the platforms that we don't support out of the box. So if there's a channel that you don't see here on the left, we have a way to add it in. The message router uses rules to send messages to the right responder to deal with it. As I said, this could be automated like a virtual assistant bot, or it could be a live agent, or it could start automated and escalate if needed. And if we're going to a live agent, then the desktop is there for the agent to handle the inquiry and interact with the customer. So we give the agents both a conversation-oriented view, so they can see a multi-channel kind of conversation history with the customer, including all the detail and context that they need, as well as a more kind of traditional case-oriented view for more detailed history and context there. But again, the extensible nature of this platform is you can bring your own bot, bring your own desktop, so we can fit in with the elements that you already have.
Huh. So you're saying that if a customer has deployed, for example, a proof of concept with Google Contact Center AI. I mean, I remember when that was first announced a couple of years ago, there was a blog on the Google site that said hundreds of requests had come in to do a proof of concept. So if I've done that and not really taken it any further, I could connect that to Messaging Hub?
Yes, so you could use both experiences, for example. So on the plus side, the Message Hub can basically open that investment you've already made to more channels. And if you continue to leverage Google Dialogflow, for example, to respond to some types of inquiries. What we've seen is, that's a great platform for a quick answer to a question, not kind of one and done. But when you get into more complex diagnostic interactions that require you to capture and assemble pieces of information, throughout a lengthy conversation, then our AI capabilities really come to the fore then. So there's options to kind of, hand off to have the best fit. Okay, so that was the connect. So if we look at the solve piece in a bit more detail, so, once we're connected, engaged to the customer through those messaging channels, eGain's conversational AI can understand, the intent of the customer inquiry and choose the best way to resolve it. So when we're looking at the different messaging channels, the virtual assistant needs to be aware of how to respond in a way that's appropriate to the channel. So not all channels are equal, right? Some channels have a lot of richness in terms of the media they can use. So with basic SMS, it's not structured, there's not much richness you can put there. But with other channels like Apple Business Chat, you can present an entirely different experience for the customer with structured questions and responses, images and media and so on. So being able to recognize the type of channel that you're engaging on and delivering, the right level of response for that channel is important, and that's, part of the capability that we can bring. So we can utilize our AI to resolve the inquiry using this kind of best fit approach for the channels, but again, also escalate seamlessly when needed to a live agent and back again, as I said, if we need to. And the final piece, the optimized piece. So, one of the things that's important to do, you don't necessarily need to go big bang with this. And with our analysis, we can often help identify where you can, get the quick wins. Look at customer journeys through the IVR, identify where they're breaking down, identify bottlenecks, identify areas of high effort, and maybe focus your initial attention there. Obviously, we're able to then measure those as you kind of iteratively build this capability out. We're able to then kind of measure the effectiveness that you have with this capability. So you've got that kind of virtuous circle, if you like, of continuous improvement. So I'm just going to give kind of an overview of one of our customers' experience with Smart IVR here. So this is a major US retailer, and in the run-up to the holiday season, towards the back end of last year, they faced a number of challenges. So one was increased call volumes, which was exacerbated by the COVID situation. And the holiday season is peak for retail anyway, right? So they were faced with already having more calls to deal with than normal, having to deal with all the challenges of the pandemic, and heading into this peak. So the first desire was to enable agents to just handle more interactions. They had a base of agents. How are they going to make them more effective, more efficient? So what they already knew was that during the holiday season they get a lot of where is my order calls coming into their agents. They call it the WISMO calls, as they're known. So we work with them to deploy Smart IVR specifically for that use case. So callers would call in. If they selected the "Where's my stuff" option in the IVR, they'd be offered the Smart IVR engagement. They could drop out to that. By converting the voice calls that were being dealt with by agents one at a time, they were able to spread the load to agents to handle them via messaging, which meant they could handle multiple concurrent messages at the same time. This gave them an increased ability to handle their peak traffic and resolve inquiries. So you can see from the numbers there, 30% chose the messaging option, with 80% able to resolve their inquiry that way.
So given the success that this retailer had with eGain during the 2020 holiday season, Did they have any plans to extend what they did?
Yeah, so since then they've started expanding the use cases where they've deployed the solution. So I think the next one that they moved on to that was returns. So yeah, it's being adopted increasingly across their options.
Makes sense, because the other thing is once you have the solution in place, it's relatively easy to add use cases, I would think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's summarize some of the things that we've been talking about, both in terms of the survey and the data that it provided, and some of the things that James has talked about that eGain makes available. So how does this benefit the customer experience? Less wait time. So let's take it back to that retailer. This was a holiday where 95% of purchases were being made digitally, right? On top of all the typical issues of a holiday season in terms of volume, this is one where everything had to be made remotely, just about. And so less wait time was even a bigger issue. Faster resolution, the where is my stuff in terms of shipping. It was a season where shipping issues were just astronomical, as we all know. There were issues with all of the different carriers, at least in the US, and I'm sure in other places as well, just because of the multiplication of volume that happened, right? So better experience at the end of the day was about getting information about what was happening. You might not like what was happening, but at least having the information meant you could plan for it. For the business, being able to digitalize the existing IVR investment to improve customer experience was, particularly key in 2020. Less repeat calls coming in just takes down the volume coming into the contact center. And higher customer satisfaction is going to lead to all of those things that we talked about with customer effort. If it was easier for customers to get their information, they're more likely to be repeat buyers, to be loyal customers. And the insights into the IVR experience help the business, find the areas of concern and be able to fix them in, near real time or close, instead of having problems that you can't even figure out what's going on. So the next thing we're going to do is bring on Vivian, and Vivian's going to do a demo for us. So you ready, Vivian?
Always.
Go for it.
Okay, just let me know if you can see my screen all right.
I can. Looks fabulous.
Great. I'm glad you guys can see my phone, but yes, once again, so you can see my phone. In the background, we have the advisor desktop, but at this moment, we're actually going to focus on the phone screen. You can see I've got the customer service IVR already up, right? I've got the contact available. All I have to do is make a phone call, and I'll actually go through the IVR process.
To start, please choose your demo department. Press 1 for finance, 2 for travel, 3 for government. Thank you for calling 8 Bank. What would you like to do? Press 1 for mobile deposit. Press 2 for checking. Please hold while I'm connecting you to an agent. The wait time to be connected to an agent is 10 minutes. I've detected that you're calling from a mobile number and our agents are currently available by chat. Please press 1 if you'd like to receive an SMS message to start the chat interaction, or continue to hold for the next agent.
Now you can see from that example so far with the IVR, the system was able to determine, hey, we're kind of busy. We notice you're on a mobile phone. Would you like to start an interaction through SMS or anything like that? And you can see on the screen on the phone, not only is the eGain system able to determine this person's on a mobile phone, it can go even further and identify that this person is actually also on an Apple phone or an Apple iPhone and offer up the ability to start an Apple Business chat, right? So this takes away the time that this person may have been waiting for the IVR to be connected to an agent or to help solve their inquiry or problems. In this case, we have an SMS that is automatically sent over and started for this customer to go through, as opposed to having this person go and manually select the SMS number. From here, I'll go ahead and decide, I'll choose the Apple Business Chat and start an Apple Business Chat, right? So you can see the previous interactions are also saved. In this case, I want to ask the question of, what is this charge on my account? Now, at no point at all am I going to do anything on the advisor desktop in the background, but you can see I'm already given another question asked by whatever that is. And that's actually going to be the virtual assistant fronting that conversation to identify what the problem is for this customer and hopefully find them a resolution or the best route to take them through. In this case, you can see the next question, or the question that the virtual assistant asks, is just to verify that they're looking for information on a charge. Go ahead and say yes, send that over. And you can see automatically right after, the virtual assistant that's fronting this conversation is actually trying to ask questions to identify, what charge are you talking about, so that it could bring up the relevant information and be able to help them appropriately. In this case, I have the charge number. I'll go ahead and type that in. And then for security purposes, we can see that the virtual assistant asks for the last four digits of your national identity number, just to verify this is indeed the right person that we're talking to, and it isn't somebody who might have just taken this person's phone. So I'll go ahead and type that in, send it over. Now from this point, you can see that the virtual assistant was able to, once again, identify who I am based on my phone number and the information that I verified, as well as be able to bring up the $34 charges based on the transaction number. It was then able to give me the information as to why I was being charged, is because of an overdraft, and then finally ask me the question of, is this something that you would like to dispute? And we'll go ahead and say, yes, I have enough money in my account. I don't know why, I had an overdraft charge. Now, at this point, the virtual assistant is trained to escalate this disputing a charge problem to a live agent. And you can see right here, the virtual assistant says, well, I have to transfer you to an agent to get you the help you need. We currently do have an agent available, so it was able to search up and identify whether there was an agent. Would you like me to add you to the queue? We'll go ahead and say yes. You can see the entire process was very short and simple, right? We went through the IVR process. It took too long, so we went through the SMS, and we were able to get the information we were looking for. But when it comes to disputing a charge, because the virtual assistant was trained to escalate, we were able to be given the option to escalate. Now, I'll go ahead and minimize this real quick. I've got the activity coming in, right? I'm now going to focus on the advisor desktop. We've got an activity coming in. We've identified this person was on a mobile Apple phone. We can see the icon. I'll go ahead and select this information or this activity. You can see the entire interaction with the virtual assistant is displayed for me as an agent. So I know what type of information was shown and the context given. I can, of course, minimize this and focus on the question itself. Now, before I go into this, I do want to go into the customer details so that the relevant information on the customer, any previous history or activities they've had with the contact center is displayed. All the alternate contacts are displayed as well, any notes from previous agents, the amount of cases they've had open and closed. I can go back into the knowledge tab, and you can see here the conversation actually continues off from where the virtual assistant has left off. At this point, right now, it's just to verify for this agent that this customer would like to dispute the overdraft charge, right? I can, of course, add this to response, which will send it over to the cell phone or to the customer as a text. All I have to do is respond yes or no. In this case, we'll go ahead and say, yes, I do want to dispute this. That question is then updated within the knowledge base, within the process. And then the next step of the process is actually brought up. Now, of course, I can continue through this and add to reply every single question, or if I'm currently busy and packed, I can actually turn on bot mode, which would mean the virtual assistant is once again fronting this conversation and asking the relevant questions, while I as an agent can focus on more critical activities. So we can go through the process very quickly. Right, you can see I've answered this. Once again, it's being updated within the knowledge base. The next question is then automatically sent over, right? At this point, it's thank you for confirming, would you like to do the upgrade? We'll go ahead and say yes. Finally, just once more to confirm that this person is indeed accepting the upgrade and it's not that they made a mistake in their texting. Right, and finally, Once I'm done with this process as an agent, all I have to do is look back to ensure that all the information that was given was correct. This person has filled everything out correctly. After that, the ending article or the solution article, which would let the customer know what had happened or a summary of what the process was like, I can then add it to reply and let this customer know, hey, you've been upgraded, you're all set. If you have any other questions, please let me know. But I can send this over. And once this activity is done, I can then complete it, which will notify the customer, hey, this activity has been ended or has been completed. If you have any other questions, send another text message and we'll start another activity for you. Yeah, so that was the end of the demonstration. James?
Thanks, Vivian. I will switch back to the slides. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, so that was a great demo. You saw how we were able to take a customer interaction from the IVR, seamlessly move them across to a message-based interaction, starting with an automated interaction through to an escalated agent conversation with the right level of guidance and context throughout. So it's hopefully that came across as a really powerful capability there. Before I share, I'd like to share an exciting offer with our attendees today. But before I do that, for those who are not overly familiar with eGain, I've just got a couple of slides. They'll give you a bit of a background about who we are. So eGain offers a complete SaaS-based omni-channel digital customer engagement solution. We've been around for over 20 years, and we are headquartered in the US with locations in EMEA and APAC as well. Our customer engagement solution combines digital engagement, AI, knowledge, and analytics to deliver first-class customer business and agent experiences like the ones you just witnessed. Now, as you might expect with that kind of solution, we're really aimed here at the B2C market, the enterprise B2C market, and you'll see the kind of businesses that we work with in a slide or two. This slide gives you an idea of the breadth of capability we can offer, and we focused on a slice of that today. So we can consolidate customer interactions across all the different touch points, allowing agents to manage interactions easily and facilitating resolution to customer inquiries through either self-service or by intelligently guiding agents with solutions that are powered by our centralized knowledge base. And underneath that, as you can see, we allow the other mission-critical systems within the business to interact with those capabilities through our interfaces and APIs. We have strong partnerships with some of the leading contact center platforms, bringing digital capabilities to voice platforms like Cisco and Avaya through either OEM or reseller agreements. And we also have integrations with Amazon Connect. And like I said, we have a rich API set that enables us to offer integrations elsewhere as well. And here's a snapshot of some of the types of organizations that are leveraging these capabilities right now. So as you can see, there's some big names there across the financial, telco, retail, and healthcare verticals. We also have quite a few customers in the areas of federal and state government, both inside and outside the US. So that's a very quick overview of eGain. So you've seen our Smart IVR capability today. What I'd like to give you is a no-risk offer to try it out, what we call our Innovation in 30 Days program. So this is a no-risk offer to try it out for an SMS-based messaging use case in your own IVR. Essentially, this is a 4-week trial, so that's comprised of 2 weeks discovery and setup, and then 2 weeks operation in a production environment. At the end of that, you can choose to either continue and start paying or walk away. So there's no catch, no commitment. If you'd like to take us up on this offer, then you can reach us via the contact us page at the eGain website, and there's a link to that on the slide right there, but you should be able to find it easily if you just head to our website. Okay, and with that, Sheila, any closing remarks before we move to Q&A?
I like that 30-day trial innovation, no cost, no commitment. AI can be a little bit scary. Connecting mobile to the contact center can sound really difficult. And so the opportunity to work with somebody, think about retail. This is the time of year when companies in retail should be thinking about how do we get ready for the next holiday season. And having worked actually in retail years ago, I was at AT&T and had retail as the sector of customers that I dealt with. And if it didn't happen by September 1st, it didn't happen at all. They would freeze their IT systems. So this is a great time of year to be thinking about maybe doing that trial and seeing how well it could work in your business. So we'll turn it over to Ariel to see if we've got some questions in the chat window.
We do indeed have a few questions here. First up, can you provide us more details on the Smart IVR integration with Cisco?
Yeah, so essentially so we work with Cisco CVP, that's their IVR platform, and essentially we provide a pre-configured app. So basically you can call out to the Smart IVR CVP app from your existing IVR. So there's very little update to do to your existing call flow. So essentially it's like an app transfer basically. So you make the offer to do the CVP, to do the Smart IVR lookup within your app. And then once you want to defer to IVR, it's just an app transfer. So very, very seamless, very simple.
Okay. I believe this question was in response to Sheila talking about repeat calls. You're asking about repeating calls for security reasons. Perhaps you could elaborate on that, James, on how the IVR can help alleviate those sort of security-oriented repeating calls.
So I think if that's in the context of repeating information, so quite often within the IVR space, there's certainly a challenge in getting context from the IVR to the agent when you're escalating to an agent, right? So you might typically people will push things into call variables. They might make it to the desktop. So you might get some perspective on kind of what options they've chosen, but certainly with once you're in the contact center and you're passing calls around, very often, whilst it's possible to pass context, the real world experience is that that often doesn't happen, and we all know it, right? We get transferred to someone. They say, "Oh, we need to transfer you to this department to resolve your inquiry," and the context doesn't follow. As you've just seen kind of in the demo, we took context as soon as we got into the digital channel. That problem of moving context and maintaining context, it's much easier to solve. So as you saw, we were able to take the context from the messaging-based virtual assistant conversation to the agent. It had it all there right in front of them, and that follows, right? So if that agent, for example, had to escalate to, let's say, a supervisor, again, the supervisor would have the entire conversation at their fingertips when they began the interaction. So it really changes the game once you're able to get into a digital conversation like this.
Okay. Which languages are supported by the IVR out of the box, and what languages can be added later?
So yeah, so I guess they're talking about the Smart IVR capability here.
Yes.
We have a raft of languages supported, so I don't have the list on the top of my head, I'm afraid. But we can paste that into the chat later or share that later.
Terrific. any plans to integrate with Pure Connect?
So the
So
pull
Pure-
that was.
So
Sorry.
Pure Connect is the initial interactive intelligence platform that had both a premises version and a cloud version, a single tenant cloud version. So sometimes the names change pretty quickly there. So, but that's what Pure Connect is.
Thanks, Sheila. They do. So yeah, names change all the time. So we haven't had any demand for that, but we'd be open to explore it. Certainly, most of the opportunities we've seen are across those kind of core three: the Avaya, the Cisco, the Amazon. But we're open. Yeah, I mean, this is applicable throughout. So provided there's a mechanism within that platform to call out to us, which I'm fairly certain there would be. It's certainly something we'd be willing to explore.
Okay.
Contact us and we'll talk about it.
Sure. Got another one here. How does Smart IVR use AI and analytics?
Well, the AI comes into play in multiple ways. So it can come into play as early as deciding, how to route a transaction. So once we take control of the conversation, deciding where best to deal with that can be an AI-based decision within our routing engine. But really where it starts to kick in is when you've got that kind of virtual assistant-driven conversation, right? So initially you've got that, and of course, even if you're escalating to agent, the guidance that supports the agent is again kind of AI-driven, and because our analytics solution sits across all of that, not only do you have AI supporting and underpinning the customer conversation and the agent responses in a consistent manner, but you've got a clear view across all of that activity from an analytics and measurement perspective as well. So you know what people are asking and how effectively you're resolving those inquiries and where you're resolving them.
I got a question about the Innovation 30 days. How does this trial work in detail? I want a little more information about it.
Yeah, so I mean, if you reach out to us on our contact us page and say you'd like to take us up on the Smart IVR Innovation in 30 days, then our solutions team will contact you and will give you details on how to get up and running. But essentially, it's split into two halves. So the first half is, we'll understand the use case that you want to try it out with and help you get configured and set up and running and ready to go. And for the second half of the IATD, that is, you're actually running, you're live in a production environment with Smart IVR.
Terrific. There was another question that was basically asking for more information. I think you answered that there. Let's see. Is this supported on Cisco Unified CCX platform?
So UCCX is the Express Premises platform. And so there's an embedded IVR in that, James. So it's not CVP. So I'm not sure if you've ever taken it down. It's usually for the smaller contact centers, typically, 50 to 100 agent seats.
Yeah, I don't personally come across it often, but I am familiar with it. So again, it would really come down to whether that platform has the capability to call out. I know CCX tends to keep things fairly simple, so we could look into that. But like I said, we would consider, this solution is designed to be extensible. So provided that the CCX platform can reach out to us through our interfaces, it's an option.
Okay, I think we only got time for a little bit more here. Do we need any components, hardware, software, in order to integrate with the Smart IVR?
No, it should work with what you have. So it's a very, very lightweight integration.
All right. Last one here, I can answer. Will you be sharing a recording of the session later? Yes, indeed we will. Any last second questions here? Is AI used in selecting the agent? I think that would be our last question.
Yes, it can be, yeah. So we have essentially an AI routing node within our workflow that can use all types of intelligence to determine how to treat the query based on things like customer context, history, best fit, and so on.
Terrific. Well, with that, we are out of time. If you did not get your question answered, we did see it, so please feel free to keep typing in as we wrap up here. Someone from the eGain team will be in touch with you. You can always reach out to us on egain.com as well. And as I said, a recording of the webinar will also be made available. Sheila, any closing thoughts from your end? Anywhere that our audience can reach you in the future?
I'm pretty easy to find on Twitter or LinkedIn, McGee-Smith at Twitter on Twitter. And closing thoughts are, as we think about the migration to cloud, so many contact centers are still served by premises-based contact center systems, right? And the move to cloud can be a multi-year process. Even with the quickening of that happening because of recent events, it still may be 2, 3, 4, 5 years before any given company is in a position to move or wants to move. And so something like Smart IVR is a way to bring that innovation to your existing solutions without making a major forklift change. So I think it's a great sort of over-the-top solution as you build out your plans for migration to the cloud and move forward.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sheila, James, Vivian. It was a fantastic webinar. Thank you all in the audience for tuning in today. We hope that you found this very useful and enlightening, as I certainly did. We will see you guys next time. Have a great day, everyone.